Howdy folks, how's it going? This is Marstead here, trying out a restricted Iron Man concept. If you're new to my channel, I did a blind playthrough of old school RuneScape. I had never played this game before 2019 or so. I went so hard on Leagues 3 that I got the Dragon Cup. I burned out completely on RuneScape and couldn't play it for a few months. So if you are familiar with my old RuneScape content, I will be getting back to that at some point, but had this cool idea for a limited account. So let me explain the premise to you. The concept that I want to do, I don't know what to call it just yet. Demolition Man, Extinction Man. I'm really liking Bonfire Man, and I'll explain why in a second. So if you have ideas on what to call this mode, let me know in the comments. This was actually something that one of my viewers, Gamesaucer, came up with. She had this concept of what if you did a game mode where you were only allowed to interact with everything in the game world once, and then after you interacted with it, it was exhausted. So you could only kill every NPC one time, you can only, cut each tree once, mine each ore node once, and so on. And when we originally talked about it, we were wondering, like, well, how possible is this actually? Like, how much XP is in the game? Doing some math, looking at, like, what is the maximum mining level you could get at? And it turns out it's actually pretty low. You could only get to, like, mining 29, right? So we're continuing to do some theory crafting on what that would look like on the side. Gamesaucer might do an Iron Woman account that's like that, where looking at the entire game world, you're only allowed to interact with everything once. And then maybe there's some sort of rule that lets you reset the state of the game world so you can start interacting with things again. We're trying to, like, nail down what those rules would be. For this account, though, and the reason I'm thinking of calling it Bonfire Man as opposed to the other ideas that I had, is I really enjoyed watching some of these Chunk Man accounts out there, particularly Limpwert's Extreme One Chunk Iron Man and Verf's Extreme One Chunk Iron Man. With Extreme One Chunk Iron Man, the game is separated into chunks, and after you complete literally everything to do in a chunk, you get to roll a new chunk. Now that's a little bit too extreme for me. I'm not sure I want to kill 500,000 men in Lumbridge to get my defense to 99 right at the beginning. I like to do something a little bit more casual, but is still kind of borrowing from the chunk idea and maybe borrowing a bit from Gamesaucer's cool you can only do everything once idea. So the premise here is a mix of those two things. You start in Lumbridge, and that's the only chunk you can access, and I'm going to use some plugins on the right here to make that a little bit cleaner for you as the viewer to see which chunks I have and don't have. But you start in Lumbridge, and before you're allowed to leave Lumbridge, you have to exhaust everything in that starting chunk. And by exhaust, that means interact with once. So you have to chop all the trees once, after which they're no longer allowed to be chopped. You have to pickpocket all of the pickpocketable NPCs. You have to kill all of the NPCs that are in that chunk, after which they're no longer allowed to be interacted with. And each time you interact with something in this way, it is exhausted. Now, I reached out to the RuneLite devs because I was curious if it was possible to make a custom plugin to, like, literally hide the asset after you interact with it. So, like, once you chop the tree is hidden, as in the Entity Hider plugin. And they said that Jagex doesn't allow targeted hiding of assets like that. You can use Entity Hider to hide everything, but you can't make a plugin that lets you hide individual things. So the next best thing you can do is to mark things. So, like, you can put an outline around a tree and mark it red, saying that it's done, or highlight an NPC and make it red, showing that it's done. So that's how I'm going to be doing things. If this becomes interesting enough that I want to do it for longer, I'll actually write a custom plugin to mark those things for me automatically when an XP drop happens. But at the moment, I'm just going to manually mark things as red when I've interacted with them to reflect the fact that they're exhausted. Now, what this means is that at the beginning of the playthrough, I'm going to finish the Lumbridge chunk. Like, it's going to take me like 5 minutes to do everything in Lumbridge. So how is this interesting? Well, that's where the bonfire concept comes in. If you've played the Soulsborne games from FromSoft, or any of the games, there are many, many games now that have been inspired by them. There's this concept of a checkpoint that you reach. In the Dark Souls games, they're called bonfires, and interacting with that checkpoint allows you to recover your stats, but it also respawns everything in the game, because in the Souls games, when you kill an enemy, it dies. It doesn't come back until you rest at a bonfire. So kind of the premise here is, you start in the first chunk, you exhaust everything, and then once you've exhausted everything, you are allowed to roll a new chunk. So you roll your new chunk, And we pretend that when we get to that new chunk, we rested a bonfire there, right? And doing so respawns everything that was exhausted in all of the chunks we've already visited. So we'll do all of Lumbridge, and then let's say we roll, I don't know, the chunk to the north of Lumbridge, that's the cow pen. In addition to having access to the cow pen now and being able to kill all of the cows exactly one time, also everything that was in Lumbridge comes back, and we can go do that again. And you keep doing that, so the next time you want to roll a new chunk, you have to have done everything and exhausted everything in all of your available chunks. So you'd have to do everything in Lumbridge again, and then do everything in the cow chunk, right? And now you can roll a third chunk, and that will refresh everything in the first two chunks, and so on. And what I'm interested to find out, I've done some theory crafting on this, how far can you get with this, right? Because if you consider that there's 400 something chunks in RuneScape, you know, eventually you will see all 400 chunks, and that means that you will have chopped all of the trees in Lumbridge 400 times and pickpocketed the men in Lumbridge 400 times. But is that actually enough to make progress in this game? And I honestly don't know. I could sit here and do the math on it and figure it out, but I would actually rather just play the game and see if it's interesting game mode. And I guess if it's getting published to you on YouTube, that means it was interesting enough for me to publish it. So the only other question to ask, that's the basic concept. Hopefully I had some infographics on the screen that made sense there. You've got chunks. You do everything in the chunk that you can do. You exhaust everything. Once things are exhausted, you roll a new chunk, everything unexhausts, and you repeat. And it takes longer and longer for you to get a new chunk over time because you always have to go back and, you know, exterminate all of the goblins in Lumbridge every single time before you're allowed to roll a new one. Now, the thing that I said I don't know what the answer is for yet, what is the end game of this going to look like? I don't know. I could sit here and really think really hard about it, but the end game of this is like possibly hundreds of hours of gameplay away. So I'll you know, develop that concept more as the playthrough progresses. If you have ideas for any of the things I've just described, the name of the account type, what the rules should be, let me know. I think the basic rules, though, if you have to do everything in a chunk, exhaust it, and then you get to roll a new chunk and unexhaust everything, is going to be fine, and it's going to carry me for several dozen hours before I even get around to publishing this. Hey folks, Future Marstead here. I was shopping this episode around to some folks to get some early feedback and had some questions. I figured it would be good to edit the answers to those questions into the beginning of the video in case you also had them. I'll put a timestamp in the description if you want to jump to the playthrough since you just watched 7.5 minutes of intro. First comment is on long-term goals. So I think the long-term goal of this account is to do as many chunks as possible, like see how far I can get before the weight of continuing to redo every chunk becomes too much to handle. So super long-term goal is try to do all the chunks. Contained within that is do all the activities in those chunks, obviously, but things like the quest cape and the diary cape would be great. It would be amazing to unlock every chunk in the game and exhaust every resource in every chunk in the game to truly destroy the world. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's the insane, 7,000 hours goal at the end of the tunnel. Short-term goals, I install a plugin a couple episodes after this one where I'm able to visually show you my goals and mark the ones that are complete in green. This is what that plugin looks like for the Lumbridge Castle chunk. You'll see that soon. I don't have it in this episode because I hadn't researched it yet. Question was, are quests part of the chunk? Yes, although I'm not going to be able to do quests for a while. Even Cook's Assistant requires that I get access to flour and an egg, which requires me to get some pretty specific chunks. You can technically farm the imp spawn in Lumbridge to get a pot of flour, but I can't farm it. I can only kill it once every cycle, every time I hit a bonfire. So it's a question of whether or not I get a lucky pot of flour. I'll leave that up to you to guess. Sub-question about chunks. If a quest requires me to kill or mine multiple of a single resource to complete the quest, do I have to wait to hit a bonfire to refresh that resource? Absolutely, yes. It's going to be miserable when that happens, but yeah, if there's only one thing that I'm allowed to mine, I get one chance. I have to exhaust it when I touch it once, and then I have to wait for the next cycle to hit it again. So quests might be pretty drawn out in those cases. A question, what do I do when I'm gated in a chunk? So for instance, I can't chop the yew tree or the willow trees in Lumbridge in episode 1. In cases where I'm gated, I just can't do the task. When I start having that goal tracker on the side of the screen, I'm just going to leave that task red, and when I summarize, just say, hey, I can't do this just yet. And for what it's worth, getting to skip things that are impossible in the chunk isn't actually a good thing for me because I have so few resources in this game mode that I need to chop that yew tree as many times as humanly possible. So every cycle that passes where I don't have 60 wood cutting to chop it it represents you logs lost. So I come up with a rule a few episodes in that I guess I'll just tell you about now. I decide that once I actually complete a chunk, it then becomes optional to exhaust in future cycles. So I have to literally do everything in Lumbridge every single cycle, even the miserable stuff like killing all 12 rats over and over and over if I'm able to. But once I actually complete the chunk and have done every task at least once, I can still kill everything in that chunk once per bonfire cycle, but it becomes optional now to do every single subtask. So I think that's kind of a cool personal goal that I get to boost my efficiency a little bit when I actually complete a chunk for real and do all of the tasks in it, by then making the things that are more miserable in that chunk optional to do on future cycles. Those are all the opening questions. I'll let you get to the video. Enjoy. So Tutorial Island counts as a place where we have to exhaust everything possible, so we're going to go ahead and do that. Let me finish making my character here. I think I'm going to go with the name Mars Bonfire for now. I'm really feeling the idea of calling this Bonfire Man. This is what my character looks like. Pretty happy with this. Let's go ahead and confirm and get started here. You'll notice I have a bunch of plugins still active from my main account. I'm going to be turning those off as we go. I have to be reminded of which ones I actually need and which ones I can turn off. Like I can turn off that one that's above my head here. All right, first things to exhaust. I need to fish at all 3 of these locations. As you can see, I can highlight it in red there to help me keep track of which things I've exhausted. So that fishing spot is now exhausted. Now to chop the trees down. I don't know how many trees are on Tutorial Island, but we might be here for a bit. There's a lot of trees in RuneScape, it turns out. Right, so I'm over here trying to chop all the trees. I didn't know this was a thing, but apparently after you have 3 logs in your inventory, it yells at you. It says you've chopped enough for now. So I had to drop a log, and then once I drop the log, if I try to pick up the other log, it gets destroyed. Which I did not know was a thing. So I guess I technically wasted a little bit of XP here at the beginning by letting those logs to get destroyed before burning them, but we're going to get so much fire making XP in this playthrough, I wouldn't worry about it terribly. Looks like marking things in red works pretty well for me to keep track of stuff. I might change the color later in the playthrough if that turns out to be a bit of an eyesore, but it's very clear for now. That big old red line you can see back there is the chunk boundary. I'm probably going to tone that down later. I wonder if I'm the only person, or one of the very few people who has ever chopped this specific tree behind the starting building on Tutorial Island. Guessing most veteran players have moved on long since cutting the first tree, but this is kind of cool. Already interesting content on Tutorial Island. Now this is new. Perhaps you've done enough wood cutting now. So I guess you're not allowed to chop the trees outside the beginning area, which, honestly, thank God. I'll try to burn this to see if it lets me, but no, you've done enough wood cutting. Okay, there's a lot of trees here. There's a lot of trees everywhere. This is still going to be a deforestation playthrough. This is a Fern Gully playthrough, but we're playing as the Tim Curry, like, smog monster. Alright, mining some ores here. Gonna try to mine all of them. I actually forgot to immediately mark the ones I mined, so now I don't remember which one it is. And I think that's the right one. This is gonna happen occasionally, though. We should probably think of ores as being fungible. Not that I can, like, I can't, like, go to an ore patch and count 9 copper ores and then just mine the same ore 9 times. That would be cheesy. But in the case of making a mistake like that, as long as it's providing the same reward, I can fix it that way. But let's be honest, the account's ruined. I screwed that up. Got to start over. So I may have totally sat here smithing and not realized that the XP is capped at level 3, mining and smithing. It's still correct. I still need to exhaust everything because that's the rule. But yeah, probably didn't need to actually smith all of it. Could have just done the mining and then dropped it, or brought it with me out of the island if it lets me. These ores are going to be hard to get, by the way. I don't think I'm going to get access to copper for a really long time unless if I get lucky on chunk rolls. So smithing is going to be a particularly brutal skill to train. I'm going to really depend on random ore drops from enemies, I think. And we'll talk a little bit more about shop stock later, but I can't overly abuse shops. Probably can only buy out their stock once per playthrough, or maybe we'll come up with some mechanic to reset our access to shop stocks. But this playthrough gets pretty boring if we unlock an ore cellar in the blast furnace and just have infinite ore, right? So for combat here, I'm going to try to kill as many of these as I can, but I think it might only let you kill one of them. Obviously, I'd like to wipe out all those rats if possible. While I'm killing these rats, to that end, as I mentioned, like, I kind of just want to play this mode rather than sit and spend 20 hours theory crafting it, because I'm not really going to know how it's going to feel until we play it. So there's going to be some flexibility in the rules. I welcome you to bear with me on that. If you are the kind of person like Limpwort who's watching me and I make an exception, 10 hours in and you flip your table, why would you do that? I understand. Oh, there's a bank here. That's cool. I probably should have smuggled all the copper and tin out with me since it's going to be so hard for me to get it. Okay, I suppose maybe 10, 20 chunks in. I hope to kind of have the rules totally solidified about, like, for example, I have no idea what I'm going to do with farming patches. Is a farming patch like an anvil? Does that mean I get to use it as many times as I want because it's just processing a skill that I got from elsewhere? We'll find out when we get there. All right, of course, we're going to do this as an Iron Man. It's the only way to play. I probably should just roll Hardcore Iron Man. I'm probably going to give up Hardcore status instantly. I haven't thought about this too much, but I think getting food is going to be almost impossible for a while because I can't farm enemies. There's not a lot of food in the first chunk, and even if there was, even if I could like kill giant rats or something. All right, here we are in Lumbridge. I've turned on the Region GPU plugin, which is very cool. If you've watched other chunk content, I'm sure you've seen this, but it shades the areas that you are locked out of, so it's very clear where the chunk boundary is. Looks like there's a couple things marked from when I was testing on my main account, so I'm going to log out real quick just to clear all those, and then we'll start again. Hey there, folks. Future Marstead here, editing from several episodes in the future. I found a really nice plugin for goal tracking several episodes in. Did not have it in episodes 1 or 2 or the beginning of episode 3, and I wanted to go ahead and use that plugin now to give you an overview of what my goals are going to be in the Lumbridge chunk, so you can kind of keep track of what it is that I'm doing exactly. Remember, the objective is to roll a new chunk, and the way we roll a new chunk and get to a new area is by doing everything in this chunk that we can do. So here's that list on the screen right here. We have to kill 53 goblins, 11 men, 5 women, and 1 imp. Those are all of these spawns in the zone. And I guess 1 ram, technically, although a bunch of other rams can wander into that pen. Anything that says slay in here means kill, obviously. Steal, we have to pickpocket the men and women each once before we can consider them actually completed. We have to chop trees, 24 regular trees, 15 dead trees. We're not going to be able to get to the oak trees. I don't think there's enough XP in the first chunk for that to be possible, or the willows are used for that matter. There are 5 sheep spawns that we have to shear minimum. If more sheep wander in, that's great, but only have to do the spawns. The critters, in this episode I'm going to do all the critters, so I'm going to kill all of the rats and the giant spiders. I'm pretty sure in this episode I didn't even realize that the ducks in the river were targetable, and they're only targetable with ranged. And the ducks are going to contribute a lot much later to me kind of thinking about making critters optional as part of exhausting the chunk, since they drop nothing and give a very minimal amount of XP. But that's a discussion for another time. The item spawns, there are 11 different items that spawn around Lumbridge. There's the mined rune in the castle. There's a bunch of stuff in the cellar. So, I can pick those up if I want to, optionally. If I don't pick them up, I'm SOL. I can't get them back later. I think here I'm going to try to get all of them because it's my first run through the chunk. The right side there, you can see Lumbridge Cellar. So a rule with, or at least what I'm using for Chunkman, if we roll a surface chunk and it connects to some underground area, we don't have to separately roll for the underground area. We automatically have access to all of it. In this case, we automatically have access to all of the Lumbridge Cellar. Really all we can do down there is kill the spider critters and pick up the item spawns. There's like a couple boots and a jug and maybe a knife and a couple other cooking utensils. The other items slaying the goblin guards and the goblin miners and mining are requiring a quest to get to, so we're not going to be able to do those. So again, the objective is to just do everything on this list that's possible, so it will not include oaks, willows, yews, or anything that's in the cellar that requires a quest. Once we do all of that, that's when we roll a new chunk. I get this plugin installed around the end of episode 3, and at that point it's on the side of the screen most of the time that I'm talking, so it should be much easier to follow what it is I'm working on at any given time. Anyway, let's get back to the playthrough. We're in Lumbridge now, let's go. So there's a bit of ambiguity here, like I have to pick the pockets of NPCs and kill them. So I have to make sure I do those back to back before I mark the NPC. I'm probably going to mark an NPC as I go to interact with it, which might cause some issues if I mark them and then they like kill me and I come back and I don't remember which one I was working on since I can't see their health totals. But I think in general I'm going to try to pickpocket first and then kill. I'm working on man number 2 of 11, I think it is. I might not have the count right here at the beginning, but I'm not done with this chunk until every man has been pickpocketed and killed. Everything else has been done. Not sure how I want to handle rats right now. I might change my mind on this. For now, I think I'm going to kill them because I need the XP. They're so little in this chunk, and they're worth a little bit to hit them. But critters like this that don't have any drops, like don't even drop bones, I might exclude in the future. We'll see. It's fun to be killing them right now because I've never noticed them. Like, I just filter them out in my vision, like in my peripherals. I don't even see those rats at all. I think this imp is a pretty important spawn. I want to say there's only one in Lumbridge, so I only get to kill it once per cycle. Like, once we roll a new chunk and rest at a bonfire, I can kill it again. But it has a really interesting drop table. I only got ashes and burnt meat. So not great. That actually makes me worried about Imp Catcher. I don't know if there's enough imps in the world. I don't know how many cycles I'm going to have to do to get all the beads for Imp Catcher, right? On my other accounts, I've fought imps hundreds of times and not getting a full bead set, so if I can only kill as many imps as are in my chunks once each per loop, that's going to be pretty bad. I just picked up the Mind Rune back there by the stairs. I just marked the tile where it was. I think for item spawns, I can optionally pick them up, and in this, I'm going to try to get as many of them as I can now because it's the beginning of the run. But I can only pick them up once per cycle, and if I choose to skip them, it's my loss. I can't go back and like say, oh, I didn't pick up the bowl in cycle 3, so now I owe myself an extra bowl. Now, if I choose to skip it, I'm just SOL. And I think I'll just mark the table after I pick it up so I can keep track of it. Kill another rat. Ah, all the ore I deposited on Tutorial Island got destroyed, so you can't smuggle any of that out of there. I guess that makes sense. There's so much ore in that room. I know a lot of restricted accounts and like league accounts really like these log spawns. I can only get them once, but I'll still go ahead and pick them up here. It's 4 logs. I can get those once per cycle. Oh, this is cool. I don't think I ever knew that there were men or women on the 2nd floor of Lumbridge Castle. All the NPCs that are very rarely fought, or like nodes or trees that are never cut or interacted with, we're going to get to see, and that's probably one of the things I'm most excited about here. I had no idea that there were pickpocketable NPCs up here, and I'm going to be seeing a lot of them. Since I'm going to be doing Lumbridge Chunk so many times, I'm going to know Lumbridge really well. So I think we've successfully murdered and pickpocketed all of the men and women in Lumbridge Castle. Checking down in the basement here. We'll kill these spiders for now, but like I said, I might skip critters in the future. There's some interesting spawns on here. I can see some boots, a bucket, a cabbage, a knife, a jug. I'll pick those up and mark them. Wonder how many people have fought these spiders. I know people fight the spiders out by the ham hideout for turrial boosting, but another rule I'm not clear on is splashing okay in this mode? I would err on the side of no. I think 2 general rules I'm considering is I want to do things that cause me to see more content. So if there's a rule discrepancy, if something would cause me to see more content, I'm probably going to go with that rule interpretation. And if something would allow me to do something infinitely, like grind forever, that's probably not allowed. So splashing lets me grind forever. It's less interesting than dealing with limited resources, so I probably can't splash. There's nothing I can do about enemies like naturally regenerating health, so I just need to try to not go out of my way to abuse that. Still on the rat murder spree. Those boots I got downstairs are an upgrade, so that's nice. I think so long as I'm close to the bank, I'm going to bank my bones to hopefully use them with like an altar or the Ectofunctus. It's unlikely I'm going to roll a chunk anywhere near any of those things anytime soon, but a man can dream. If I bank them, I can always chain bury them later. Once I get a little bit further away, like when I make it to the cow chunk, it's probably going to be unwieldy to bank all those bones, and I'll just start burying them. But right now, there aren't any prayers that I care about, so it's fine. And so we got a chunk boundary down here that's a little complicated. There's enemies that spawn down there that I could technically get to. There's a handful more rats I could reach, but I can't actually get to those tiles without crossing the illegal chunk. So I think that they're off limits. There might be some jank around chunk boundaries. I've noticed this in a couple other chunk accounts. We'll adjudicate them as we go. Like I said, expect it to be a little fluid. I would like this to be a reasonable... Like, it's going to be a crazy grind. This is going to take thousands of hours to get to all the chunks, if we even do it. But in the meantime, I don't want to suffer unnecessarily if it would make the content uninteresting or lock us out. That's why we're not doing Extreme Chunk Man, we're doing Bonfire Man. I think I ever needed there was bronze pickaxe on the roof here. May as well grab the Iron Man armor. I think it's best in slot for a while. Unless if we get some pretty lucky chunk rolls. I'm going to go ahead and claim the things from the tutors here. For now, I'm going to say I can only claim items from them once. I don't know how to... There aren't a lot of NPCs in the game that are like this. There are a handful of shops that only... They sell like an infinite stock of items, but you have to buy them through like a dialogue instead of a shop interface. So that's like beers from stores. The farmers that protect patches will sell you compost and that kind of a thing. So I might rule that you can buy each of those once per day. You might be able to claim these once per day. I think the claim is a little... I might just not bother claiming here because I think that that's going to be a really huge source of runes if I do that. And it would be more interesting if I have to depend totally on runes from, you know, lucky drops or lucky chunk rolls. Hey, it's the Woodsman tutor. I love the... If you haven't watched Limpwert's Extreme One Chunk Man video, he's watching a guy who's doing a regular chunk man and saying, I'm not going to get the woodcutting cape, that's too ridiculous. And he like throws his table and says, why not? So you're probably going to throw your table at me because I'm not going to go for it. And I have a rationale for it, but mainly it's because it's impossible. I can't get to 99 woodcutting in Lumbridge with my rule set because there's not enough trees. So, hey, I'm saved from doing ridiculous shit like that. Still over here trying to chop down all the trees, just marking them all in red. Those are nice. You can see them through walls, so as we go, you should be able to see me deforesting all of Lumbridge. I don't know if I'm going to get enough woodcutting XP to be able to chop the oaks. Again, if I don't have the level to do something, I still get to finish the chunk, right? Otherwise, the game would just lock out. So once we chop everything that we're able to chop and kill everything that we're able to kill, that's when we're done. This is where I tell you how badly I underestimated the size of the chunk. I'll probably edit the video to like make fun of myself when I say, yeah, it's going to take 5 minutes. Nope. I've already been at this for an hour, and I haven't even really started the goblins across the river yet. Still working on pickpocketing men and women, cutting down all the trees. Yeah, that agrees in the corner there, hour and 16 minutes. I think the breakpoints in this mode are going to be insanely fun and orgasmic. Like, whenever you unlock a new chunk, you just did everything in a whole bunch of chunks, so you really had to work for it to get it. This is grindy in a very different way, I think. I just grabbed an onion from the top of the shop here. I didn't know there was an onion that spawned there. I desperately need the food. I probably just need to die and drop my hardcore status now. There's no food here. Like, it would have to all be item spawns. The rats don't drop any meat. I can't get to the cows. You got some goblins over here wandering across the chunk boundary. You can see them. That's going to add a little bit of uncertainty to things, but if it's in my chunk, I can kill it. All right, I'm on the other side of the river, and there are way more goblins here than I thought. In my mind, for some reason, I'm like, yeah, there's a good number of goblins over there, but you can kill them in like a minute. Maybe if you have a cannon. I do not have a cannon. I don't think I will ever have a cannon. I might have a cannon, but how long is it going to take me to get the cannonballs? If I can only get so much iron. Still just working on the trees here. Then we'll go to the goblins afterward. Finally got level 2 thieving. I'm almost out of men and women. Thieving is going to be one of the slowest skills, or one of the worst impacted skills by my rule set. It's very much balanced around you picking the same guy's pocket a million times, and I can't do that. I get to pick everybody's pocket once, so... We'll see if there's some solution that presents itself in a later chunk for thieving XP, but... It's probably going to be like 15 chunks until we get 15 thieving. A couple other skills are going to suck too, like Slayer. Fishing, I think. Fishing's built around you standing AFK at a single node for a long time. I'm starting up on goblins here, and I want to wipe them all out, and I'm kind of excited that I got a water rune drop. I feel like those are trash drops for most people. You can just go buy a bunch of runes. I can't buy a bunch of runes, so any rune drops are exciting. So many trash drops are exciting, actually. Right now I'm switching to chopping trees for a little bit just because my health is so low, but I should just go ahead and get it over with and die. I probably should have foreseen this when I looked at how much food was in the first chunk. The alternative is to sit and let my HP regen naturally. That's not worth it. Taking a look at Bob's axes to think about what I want to spend money on. Don't have a lot of options here in terms of upgrades. The battle axes have a speed of 6, which isn't great. For clarity, though, it's not going to matter with this particular store, but I can only buy whatever the stock is once, so if Bob only has one Myth Battle Axe, that's the only one I'm ever allowed to buy. For now, I might revisit stock rules or allow need to restock them in some way in the distant future, but I think that's going to serve us. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Once I buy out a stock and really want more items from it, that's when I'll decide how we're going to handle that. If you have ideas, feel free to put them in the comments. If I haven't already gotten to that point by the time episode 1 is published. Went ahead and grabbed an iron axe, though. Got a bronze square shield from goblins. That's an upgrade. I've been feeling bad about using this shitty bronze sword from the beginning of the game, but I don't think I really have another option because I don't have much access to money. Look at this. We've chopped every tree in the chunk except for the oaks because I can't get to them. Looks nice. Oh, I've left the tree behind. I'm just going to knock it out real fast. Now that I'm out of trees, I can't go do something else to regenerate health when it gets low on goblins, so it's time to die. Just let it happen. Hey, a chef's hat. That's useless. I'm going to end up killing so many goblins. By the time I get to like chunk 10, I'm going to have like 700 goblin kills at least, I think, depending on what other chunks I roll. I'll be killing 500 alone from Lumbridge. Hey, finally died. Wonderful. Thank God that's over. It was worth starting as that. Alright, so this raises a good question. I just looted my own bones. Is that okay? I'm going to rule that I can only do it once per cycle. I mean, once it's regular bones, it's going to stop mattering mathematically pretty quickly, but just so it's not an infinite source of XP that I could die and pick up my own bones forever. But I will pick them up the first time. I think that's not a big deal. Oh, there's an iron dagger inside this house over here. That is almost certainly a big upgrade. Man, I need to study these chunks a little bit better. But I don't know that anyone's ever used this iron dagger as an upgrade. I'm sure people have just gone somewhere and bought a better weapon right away. This is pretty amazing. This is why I wanted to do this mode, is for stuff like this. Just got a bronze necklace from a goblin. Has no stats, but it looks cool. So, Fashionscape, here we are. And the iron dagger is way better. It's a little bit worse strength bonus, but it doesn't matter because I'm currently trying to get just attack to 10, so I stop missing constantly. And then we'll do strength. Alright, let's pretend that's always been my Iron Man armor right there. Let's pretend I was never a hardcore. This is more like it. Still working on killing these goblins, man. We're an hour and 40 minutes into Lumbridge. It's going to take me 5 minutes to clear Lumbridge. Part of it is I'm only hitting for 1 because I haven't trained strength yet. But I'll focus on that pretty closely. I just really like to have my attack to at least 10, so I'm not whiffing constantly. Here's a tricky situation. I'm almost dead. I gotta be careful about tagging this goblin, because if I tag it early and I die, I'm in trouble. How do I find the goblin that I tagged before? Again, I think we can treat goblins as fungible, so if I have to make it up by just killing an extra one or killing one fewer by marking them, I'll just try to keep an eye on the kill count and compare it to my goal. The best thing about dying is getting your run energy back. Agility is going to be really rough on this account. I have to do more walking than almost any other kind of account. A lot of the time you spend regenerating run energy is when you're like standing in an oak tree, silently mining it for a few minutes. I'm just moving all the time because I can only interact with everything once, so I'm just going to be walking. This is a Walkman account. Let's just go ahead and call it that. Oh, I just got a bronze spear to drop. That's actually better than my my current weapon. They buffed spears recently, so it's better than the iron dagger. So I'm going to switch to it. I guess it doesn't let me use a shield, but I don't really need defense at the moment. Now, and another downside is I have to attack uncontrolled, which I was just trying to switch to strength, but it's okay. I could use some more attack XP, and getting my defense up a little bit would keep me from dying constantly like I currently am. Still not done with these goblins. You can count the red ones. We're up to 42 goblins out of, I think we said 53 total, so getting there, slowly but surely. Curious how much faster this will be when my max hit is way higher and I have better gear. Beginner clue scroll at the Grand Exchange. Bummer, gotta dump it. Hey, finally hit a 2 on the last enemy I was attacking, after getting to 5 strength. That's double. Getting max hit increases this early is really important. Not only is it extra max damage, but it is another number you roll that's not 0, right? Because you can technically hit and roll a 0 for damage, and the chance of rolling 0 gets lower the more numbers are on the table, which is good. Okay, here are all the dead goblins so far. I think we got them all. I'm at 54 kills, so I'm likely just killed one that came off the chunk boundary. 53 is the number that's spawned in this chunk. right? It doesn't necessarily account for things that can wander here. I'm going to start marking I just marked the NPC guy for the canoe. I might mark the other NPCs in Lumbridge too. I keep getting them confused for pickpocketable NPCs. Just help me to keep track of it. On our last step here, we're pickpocketing all the men and killing them, and I just got a bronze med helm from one, which is not an upgrade because of the Iron Man set. But this is our last task now, is to finish up pickpocketing and killing all of the men and women. Oh, I missed a goblin back here. Or it's a goblin that wandered over. It probably wandered from the other chunk, actually, since I'm already at 54 kills. But I'll try to kill him. This is basically a goblin genocide playthrough. I'm a ham man. Oh, fuck ham. Racist punks, fuck off. Close to being done, it occurs to me I can get into the sheep pen. I don't know how many of these sheep cross the boundary, but I should probably shear all of them and kill the rams in there. Kill this ram, and I'm going to pop over to the store in a second and buy some shears. Killing a goblin that spawned in the pen here. I'm going to need to shear these sheep. I need their crafting XP. I think the crafting XP from wool is like absolutely terrible, but it's better than 0, which is my current access to crafting XP. So yeah, we'll do this every single round. We're going to shear every sheep. I think there's only a few that technically spawn in this chunk, but it looks like a lot of them wander into the corner here, so I'm going to try to get as many as I can and tag them as I exhaust them here. Looks like I've gotten every sheep that's able to wander over the chunk boundary. Looks like our final score was 10 wool, which isn't too bad. Doing a quick tour real quick just to make sure I did everything. And there's not any goblins walking around that I didn't kill or trees that aren't marked. Also validating there on the right that my man pickpocket count equals my man bones count. And same for women. I think I may have accidentally killed a woman twice here. I don't think there's any opportunity for one to wander out of the chunk, so I'll see if I can correct that in a future cycle. I'll just kill one fewer woman. This is actually a ton of fun. If you look at my clock at the bottom left corner, this took me 2 hours and 20 minutes. Far cry from 5 minutes. But it's actually really fun. I'm having a blast, and I'm excited to see how efficient I can make this. Alright, let's make these balls of wool for a homeopathic amount of crafting XP. Oh my god. Speaking of the spinning wheel, I can process items as much as I like. The restriction is on getting the items from the game world. It would be double dipping to also restrict the number of times I can use anvils or spinning wheels or whatever, right? All right, let's review the chunk. This is what we got in the bank here. Started organizing early, which I haven't done in any of my other accounts, and I learned my lesson on my group iron. We got 76 bones saved up, which isn't too bad. Probably going to end up burying these. The more I think about it, I don't think I'm going to get to an altar chunk. Probably not for 1,000 hours. If it took me 2 hours to do Lumbridge, those bones are going to get buried manually. XP-wise, you can see what I earned on the right side in the XP tracker, but here are my current total levels. Made it to 11 attack and 5 strength, which isn't too bad. I think woodcutting is going to be our highest skill, just because of how many trees are in the RuneScape game world. It's a lot. It's a lot of trees. You'll see. Should get oaks next episode, although it's not that big of a difference because I can't chop them forever. Thieving, we're going to be stuck on. Thieving's going to be bad. It'll be really exciting if we can pickpocket the ham members, but I don't think we're going to get enough thieving XP to do that for a long time. Here's the kill counts. We did kill 57 goblins at the end, 2 rams, 10 men, 6 women, and an imp. And that doesn't count all the critters we killed because they don't drop anything, so they don't show up in the loot tracker. Let's go ahead and roll the next chunk now so you can be excited for what's going to be in the next episode. All right, we're in the chunk picker tool here. We got 1, 2, 3, and 4 are our options. I'm hoping for 1 because 1 has the cow pen and a bunch of food, and I don't really have any food right now. And then we can get hides for crafting XP would be cool too. 2 would be kind of interesting. It's a pretty empty chunk, but the chunk directly south of it, Al Kharid, is amazing. Like I can get a scimitar there, so I wouldn't hate getting 2. Especially early, so every time I refresh it, it's not so bad. 3, I don't know very much about, but there's some fishing and mining nodes, and I currently don't have access to either, so it would be nice to get that pretty early too. 4, I probably want the least just because there's tons of trees there. I think there's over 100 trees in that chunk. There's the ham hideout, but I don't think there's much I can do there right now until I get my thieving up. But you know, I don't know much about the ham building. I've only ever gone in there and pickpocketed 1 guy, so maybe it's interesting in a chunk and a Bonfire Man account. Let's pick the chunk. Oh, we got the ham hideout. All right, well, we're about to chop a shitload of trees. My wood cutting is going to be so high. I'm excited. I'm excited though. There's also a farming patch there. That's nice. I think there are some other interesting NPCs there, and I think I might be able to kill the guards in the ham hideout, and they might have an interesting drop table, so I'm looking forward to that. Everything in Lumbridge is pretty boring in terms of drops, other than that one imp. There's like maybe a couple dozen ham guards in the ham hideout, and I could get the ham armor set. They might even drop some like steel weapons, I want to say. I haven't looked at the table in a while, but I think we could probably get like a pickaxe upgrade in there too. So yeah, I'm not as mad about it as I was saying. I would have preferred any of the other chunks, but this could turn out okay. And I'm excited to get some farming XP early. I should be able to farm that patch every cycle from now on. But thanks so much for watching. This has been a blast. We'll see you in episode 2. I'm not 100% sure whether episode 2 is going to go on my main channel right now. It's pretty hard to fit series like this on my main channel because I have so many like Let's Plays from my main streaming content, and YouTube makes it terrible to bucket content. So check the description. There'll be a link to a second channel if it's going there. If it's staying on this channel, I'm probably just going to update it once a week on the weekend, so it's not really clashing with my normal uploads. But yeah, thanks again. We'll see you in episode 2 in the Ham Hideout. Bye, everybody.